Welcome to the SOB radio show, where we have fun, interesting guests, and hot topics. Each week, we offer insights into music, fashion, health, fitness, and humor. Do you have the perfect guest for us to interview? I want to know. Drop me a line on our Facebook page at SpunkyOldBroad1 or reach out to me on our website at SpunkyOldBroad.com. And now, back to the show.
Jane Deuber is a sought-after business strategist, international speaker, and 7-time successful entrepreneur. She's helped thousands of clients build highly profitable businesses that provide them with the freedom, fun, and income they've always wanted. While armed with a master's in international business, it's her 30 years in the entrepreneurial trenches that gives her such a powerful perspective on how to succeed in business. In 1987, she parlayed a $5,000 investment into a multi-million-dollar enterprise before selling it in 2000. And since then, she's gone on to grow 6 additional businesses, enable her to crack the code on how to quickly and profitably turn her business vision into your reality. Today, she is a highly acclaimed Master Path Platinum Mastermind and is revolutionizing how experts grow their business with an emphasis on automated income driven by sound systems for success. So grab a pen and paper, get ready to discover her 6-step process for turning your business vision into your reality. Welcome, Jane. I'm getting my pencil back as well.
Well, I'm delighted to be here. You are a master at this, and I'm just really excited to talk about one of my favorite topics, which is really taking one's business to the next level. So thanks for the opportunity.
Well, you've been at this game of entrepreneurship for 30 years, and I've been at it for 60 years.
Oh, my
You've
gosh.
founded 7 companies over that time. I've just founded maybe, I think, 4 or 5. So tell us why you love the entrepreneurial game and why you're also committed to helping others on their path to entrepreneurism.
Well, I mean, thank you for that. And I think I first fell in love with the whole concept of entrepreneurship. I was raised in an entrepreneurial family. My dad was, one of those guys who started off with nothing and over the years built a number of businesses that I saw him change, thousands of people's lives through the business. So I think always, Gayle, I never imagined myself being employed. So, I went and got my undergrad and then went on to master's to get a master's in international business. And just, I knew this was my calling. And I am of the belief that entrepreneurship is the single most transformational experience anyone can undergo. It is not for the faint of heart. It's definitely for those people who are mission and values driven. And I just love playing with those kind of people because they're out to have a big impact on the world.
Well, you and I are simpatico on that. I've never worked for anybody else myself. And as I was telling somebody in another broadcast, my first job was at 13 selling Avon cosmetics door to door because I refused to babysit and I had to pay for a few things that happened at the time. But so I believe in entrepreneurship too. And I'm very thankful that now is really a perfect time for entrepreneurs. But we're talking about women who are 50 plus. And so many of them think it's too late. They say, oh, well, I'm 50, my life is over. I've raised my kids. I've got an empty nest. What am I going to do now? Some are still happily married. Some are not. So after working with thousands of entrepreneurs, what would you say are the keys to success in beating the odds and thriving in business?
It's a great question. And I love the fact that we're speaking to your tribe of women over 50 who are building businesses because honestly, I'm 58 and I will tell you that I really just caught my stride, I think, and found my own voice. And I think what happens when we cross that bridge and come into the 50s, 60s, and 70s, I think we're more comfortable in our own skin. I think we have a tendency to not care so much what other people think, so we can stand in our strength and put our stake in the ground. And so I have to say, I would say 80% of the clients that we work with at Global Experts Accelerator, 80% are over 50. And it's because I consider that stage to be the time when, if people are thinking about business, Gayle, I like to have them think about leaving a legacy. And that legacy has to be leveraged in order for people to be able to have the impact and the freedom and the income that they want to have. So for me, I think that, if you're in that place, and whether you've just started out, whether you're thinking about it, or whether you've already caught your stride, I think the most important thing is, because at this stage for women, we've got also the emotional roller coaster. We have to learn how to manage our inner game, because while we're standing in our strengths and we're probably more equipped than we ever were in our entire lives, we also have that experience of bumping up against the fear, doubt, the worry, the overwhelm that we may have experienced before. But sometimes at this age, the dial's turned up a bit. And so we have to not only just remember who we are, stand in our strengths, but really learn to navigate that emotional roller coaster that can literally, take you to your knees on some days, or on those days that we can push through, really, really allow us to have the impact that we're here to have.
So since you're dealing primarily with women who are over 50, what is the biggest question you get from them?
I think for them right now, if I look at this particular demographic, I think right now, really understanding how to embrace marketing and how to make the marketing process their own at this stage. I'm assuming you want to we'll go behind the curtain and pull the curtain back and talk honestly about it. But I think the biggest challenge that women at this age who are building businesses, especially if they're in the thought leader space of coach, consultant, speaker, trainer, or author, I think the biggest challenge is playing the game in social media and being seen. And when we're at a stage where we're just making sense of how our bodies are changing, maybe we put on a little bit of weight, we're not at the same place we were physically in our younger years. I find that just really helping women stand in their power and love themselves and love how they look, and really understand that this is part of what they're bringing to the game, is this wisdom and embracing that. I don't know, Gayle, you also, this is your world as well. And to me, that feels like it's a big part of what they're struggling with, and learning how to navigate is finding that voice in social media where we need to be present, we need to be doing video, we need to be out there, and being comfortable in our skin at this stage of our lives.
Well, it's interesting because many men, when they hit that over 50 mark, they're already thinking about retiring. And women are thinking about, okay, now I've got everybody gone and I've done what I'm supposed to do, and or I've worked all my life for somebody else or whatever it happens to be, and now it's time for me to develop these other things. And sometimes there's something that's even different in just the thought process because of their home life, and what the other members of the family might be wanting them to do. But I agree with you. I mean, it's interesting how people approach all of this. But you have something that you call purposeful planning, and you say it's one of the skills that every entrepreneur needs to develop. Yet most tend to avoid it like the plague. So, what is it, and why is it?
Well, this time every year, so depending if you're listening to it here at the end of the year or the beginning of the year, we're in the middle of what we call our Best Year Yet campaign. It's something I've done now. This is our 4th year, and it's my give back to my community. It's my way of helping people end the year consciously, making sure that they look back to the year we just lived, making sure they're pulling forth the lessons and the wisdom that this last year held for them. Because as we're designing how we want the next year to be and where we want to take our business and what we want to achieve, if we don't look back first, we have a tendency to kind of go back into the same patterns we did before. So we have a 6-step process that begins with looking back, and we ask 10 questions that will really help inform what is it they want the next year to hold. And then I walk them through 5 additional steps where they end up with a 90-day plan. They have an eagle's eye view of what they want the whole year to be. And the reason I think this is so important, Gayle, in this process, we have something called the Power Planning Quiz. And the Power Planning Quiz really has people on a scale of 1 to 10 tell us where they are on the planning process. And I have to tell you, it's in so many ways, it breaks my heart. 80% of the people who are in this process, who are new to us, who are taking the power planning quiz, out of 100, the score being 100, they're scoring at about 15 or 20, which means for the most part, they don't have those pieces in place. And where I feel my mission is, especially the end of the year and the beginning of the year, is really to shift people's relationship to planning, because many people are not planning because, number one, they don't know how. Number two, they're afraid if they do create a plan and it doesn't come to fruition, they're going to feel, crappy about themselves and they're going to have some regrets. And also, people don't plan because they think it's too confining. And these are the four sort of, I believe, misconceptions about planning that we help people through so they can change their relationship to planning, because not having a plan is really at the core of most people's suffering in business. People are shooting from the hip and they're going with a whim and they're making it up as they go along. And this does not get us to the goal. So that's my mission through the program.
True. Planning is really important. I don't know in my life if I've always planned as much as I should have. I mean, I've had things in my mind that I wanted to do, and I'm the person who kind of just goes for it, But
right.
There are so many bright, shiny objects that get us sidetracked. And one of those things is something that you mentioned, which was social media. I mean, you can be all day on social media. If it can just hook you, and there you are. Whereas the experts say, well, if you spend 15 to 20 minutes a day on social media, that's all you need to do. But there are so many, there's so many aspects to that I'm not sure. I don't handle it well myself. So it's interesting that, how much do you really want to spend on it? And sometimes I look at some of the conversations, where they say, the notifications, and I think, oh my gosh, I could be all week on this. So
yes,
I think that there has to be a planning structure just for your social media, or it can usurp your life, but it is
I think you're right.
It's an important part. But, okay, so, this is the first of the year, and, assuming that our listeners understand what purposeful planning is and how important it is, what is the first step that they need to take to powerfully step into a great year?
Yes. We call it purposeful planning because it's really designed so that the year is exactly what they need it to be. And so, as I mentioned, that the first step is really making sure we look back. We ask 10 questions about what went well and what didn't go so well, so that we can take those lessons as we're designing the plan for the next year. The next step, after we've kind of let the past inform the future, then we move into vision crafting. And this is interesting, Gayle. My sense, you've had so much success in your career that you do this intuitively. But I know that I've come to learn that it's not intuitive for most people. And so we have crafted 17 questions that really allow a person to consider all aspects. So they have a 360-degree vision, a multidimensional vision around their business. Who do they want to collaborate with? What are, the clients? What do they imagine who they're going to serve? What are the products? What are the revenue streams? And so we kind of come in through a right brain creative approach to what has been a very linear process. And, one of my favorite, we just, taking a big group through just now, and we got an email from one of our dear community members over in Sweden. And what they were saying is, for the first time, they were able to literally outline all the things that they wanted to have happen in their business in the next year. They were able to do it in 25 minutes, which is a pretty cool thing. Now, we need to do some other things to build out that vision. We want to make sure that what we've come up in that first draft, we use 7 decision-making questions that allow that person. So the first draft, usually we have a whole lot of ideas down on paper of what we want to create. And then we use a process to really, really vet out what are the things that deserve your attention. What is right for you at the time and place you're at in your business right now? You've seen it, Gayle, I'm sure, where we have people who are doing the right thing but at the wrong time. They're ahead of the game, and they need to have some other things in place before they go spend their money or spend their energy on something. So one of the things that we like to do, and this is all a free campaign that we do, it's my mission to get people to really step into the year powerfully. And we have a tool where they can actually go through, it takes about a 10-minute period, where they can identify where exactly they are on track and what are the missing pieces. And from there, they can step in with more clarity to take that vision and then turn it into the plan. And we have 4 additional steps that we then do that.
That's wonderful, because I think people need to be able to do that. And, I love the fact that she was able to do that in 25 minutes. The reason I say that is I just think so many people overcomplicate everything. I mean,
yes.
It's, certainly I don't think anything is just a split-second decision or easy with no work behind it. But some people just really make a project. It's just like when people say, they want to write a book, and they've been writing this book for 10 years. And really, if you sat down and you wrote it, let's say for a solid weekend, or if you spent every morning for an hour writing it, you'd have your book. So it's, I just think people overcomplicate things sometimes. But, if you invite people to look back in order to make wiser decisions for the year ahead, and what comes after that?
Well, I mean, so we have this, one of the processes, my favorite process is something called a master list of goals and projects. And it's where we take those answers to the 17 questions and we start to do, we call what's called vision scanning, where we actually either take a highlighter on the computer or actually pen and paper, and you start to highlight what are the main projects that are coming up, right? It's the answer to the question, how will I achieve that? So once we have the goal, and typically we start with an income goal, we'll typically start with maybe how much do you want to grow your community? And we ask the question, how am I going to do that? So then you're moving into the project stage. And the project stage is so important because this is where most people are putting their attention into places that they shouldn't. So we look at the year in buckets. So this is actually step 5. I want to dive a little bit because I think it's one of the best ways to overcome overwhelm. Because most people, when they look to the year ahead, they really have this sense that they want to get everything done all in the first quarter. And so we have them actually look at the rhythm of the entire year and have them consciously ask, okay, what is the first thing that needs to happen? What are the foundational pieces? And so as we look to the year ahead, Q1 has some things, but then we get to put these other things in what we call other buckets. And what that allows us to do is, especially for those people who just want to do it all, it allows you to almost emotionally disconnect from some of these things that you want to get done. And by putting it in a Q2 or Q3 or Q4 bucket, it allows you to kind of, I always say, you're calling in the universe to, okay, start working on these projects, but I'm not going to give any of my time. We're only going to pick the most important pieces. And we really work on a 90-day plan, because the reality is we need to teach each quarter, we need to treat that quarter as if it's a year. So we run for the roses, we focus in on those 12 weeks, and we treat the end of a quarter like most people do a year. But the problem is they haven't had that sense of urgency all year. So while working with the 90-day plan, it allows you to benchmark, it allows you to focus, and allows you to harness that urgency and focus without, in essence, getting into that place of overwhelm, which oftentimes can just leave people stopped in their tracks because they're so overwhelmed with all they need to do.
Well, it's interesting because I totally agree with you, because the problem is today, whether you are a global economy or you're not a global economy, whether you're just local, things that happen halfway around the world affect your business here. And so the important thing is what happens when there's some kind of glitch that is entered. I'm thinking of today, just, all the talk about tariffs and taxes and so forth, and the farmers who, are losing money with the soybeans, and now it's coming back, and the aluminum manufacturers that that, I mean, just so many things that depending on what happens in the world can affect your business. And it's got nothing to do with you necessarily, but maybe your clients or maybe, the people who are you're dealing with, what they're dealing with in their business. So, I love the idea of treating 90 days like a year, because that's something I think you can recover from. You can switch gears. You can take a different road if you need to, and you're able to do what you need to do to make it successful from that point on. So I love that idea. I love the idea of being able to do that.
Well, it's funny. It's a paradigm shift, I think, Gayle. I think back, this was way back 2 years into my first business. It was in 1989. I have a story of when my dad came. So we were building our first business. That business we took the $5,000 with and parlayed it into a couple million. But I remember my dad came to visit us 2 years in, and he witnessed the chaos that our business was. I built the business with my husband. And so he was smack dab in the middle of the center of the core of the business. And I remember he came to me and he said, Janie, let's see if we can make this easier. Let's get out your plan. Let's look to see how you're doing this. And I had to confess to him, it was really uncomfortable, but the reality was I wasn't working with a plan. And I remember having that conversation with him. Like most entrepreneurs, when I really looked to see what was stopping me from planning, Gayle, it was my fear that if I created this big, juicy vision, I mapped out a plan to get there, and then I didn't turn it into reality, that I would feel like a failure. And it was that 2 years in. Thank goodness it happened back then. I think that's what's enabled us to build so many businesses since. And the other thing related to what you're talking about and why we work on the 90-day plan is I said to my dad, I'm afraid it's not going to come true. And he said to me, Jane, it's actually very likely that you won't achieve your vision. Not exactly. He said, but the only reason we plan is so when things do change, that you're able to make wise decisions and change along with that. And that to me, it's stuck with me now. Gosh, that's been 29 years, Gayle. It was my planning paradigm. It's why I'm on such a mission to help people embrace it in a new way, is because if you fail to plan, you won't be able to navigate whatever life is going to bring us in the coming year. With a plan, you'll be able to do it from a stronger, wiser place.
This is true. The other part of that planning is not to make the plan so complicated either. I'm not sure how what your system is or what you do, but how many entrepreneurial businesses have been, formulated on a back of a napkin, or I have a friend who publishes a book called The One-Page Business Plan, and you're supposed to be able to put that all down on one page. And if it gets more complicated than that, it isn't a good plan. So there's a lot of things that go into this. And it's interesting to see that people, they don't plan because they think it's too complicated, or they don't plan because they think they might fail and they are not going to follow the plan. Or, there's just so many different things that go into it that it's kind of interesting to me. So we have about 2 minutes left in this segment, Jane, because we come back for part 2. But can you give us one of the questions that you would ask in your crafting questions?
Yeah, I'm happy to give one of the questions. You just mentioned something. I want to give a kind of a framework, because if you look to that idea of looking at a month, so let's take it down to a month, Gayle. If you look at that, you're really looking at 4 things. You're looking at what are your goals for the month. You're looking at what are your priority projects that are going to get you there, and what's the support you need to make it happen. So those are 3 things. Then we have this other element, which is what systems need to be in place. So really a monthly plan in our world really comes down to those 4 things. And once you get really clear about that, then what happens is, and you're referencing it on a weekly and daily basis, then the things that need to get done in the order that they should be done, they reveal themselves when you've been that clear to say, here's my goals, here's the projects, here's the support, and here's the systems. And that's how we keep it simple. And that's what people love, simplicity.
Well, folks, you're hearing it from our expert on this, Jane Deuber. We'll be back with Jane in part 2 of this. Hopefully you're benefiting a lot from this, and we will talk with you really soon.